America's best days are yet to come. That's because conservatives like you know and live the values our great country was built on. The Heritage Foundation exists to make sure your voice is heard in the D.C. swamp each day, shining the light on a bright future. The Heritage Foundation stands for your values and won't give up the fight because they know you never will. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
It's Larry O'Connor sitting in for the great one, Mark Levin, on this 29th day of December, winding down 2025, and what a year it's been. We're going to do some looking back today about what this year's been like. And, of course, the big headline coming out of this year is the first year of the second term of President Donald Trump, and what a year it's been. We're going to talk about some of the highlights, some of the things yet to be accomplished, and my hypothesis that the president's incredible success right out of the chute, taking care of, honestly, one of the biggest, most insurmountable problems that he inherited from Joe Biden, that he solved so quickly, it's kind of worked against him. He's actually a victim of his own success. I want to get into that later in the show. We're also going to bring you some audio from a press conference that President Trump held in Mar-a-Lago just about an hour ago with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Came down to talk about some concerns over the peace deal. I'll bottom line it for you. Shockingly, and I know you're going to be shocked by this, the Hamas terrorists aren't trustworthy. Yes, I know. Same people who just murdered 1,000 innocent people on October 7th, 2023, and held untold numbers of people hostage, abused them, tortured them, sexually assaulted them, used them as ransom and leverage for their own pathetic political goals. They also can't be trusted. We'll get to the details of that coming up a little later, too. First, though, we got to turn our sights to the Great White North. No, not that far north, not Canada. I'm not talking about Canada. Southern Canada, really. Minnesota. We got to talk about the fraud in Minnesota, and we will. I have a question for you, though, if you don't mind. And my number's 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. It's a simple question. Why aren't Democrats as outraged about the tax fraud and benefits fraud and government fraud and daycare fraud and healthcare fraud and Medicaid fraud that's going on in Minnesota right now? Why aren't they as concerned about it as you are, as I am, as conservatives are, as Republicans are, as any normal person would be? It's striking to me how they either don't want to talk about it, want to ignore it, want to rationalize it away, or, of course, their usual response when confronted with an issue that makes them look bad.
This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy.
There you go. See, you're racist. That's Tim Walz, the pathetic governor of Minnesota, who says because you've noticed the fraud going on in his state right under his nose that he benefited from. Make no mistake. We'll connect those dots for you in just a moment. Because you've noticed it and actually raise objections and say, hey, those are my tax dollars. Maybe we shouldn't have people robbing us blind. He calls you racist. He calls you a white supremacist. Why is that? Why aren't Democrats upset about this? 877-381-3811. By way of introduction, by the way, my name's Larry O'Connor. I'm a radio host in Washington, D.C. I do the morning show on WMAL, which is, the most powerful and influential talk radio station in the country. And since really we have the best talk radio in the world here in the United States of America, by definition, that means it's the greatest, most influential, and most important talk radio station on the planet. And, of course, you can extrapolate that to the solar system and the galaxy. Anyways, I do the morning show there. I also do a daily live stream podcast on all video platforms and audio platforms for Town Hall Media, the mighty Town Hall Media. So you can check that out anytime you'd like. So here's the story. Nick Shirley is an independent journalist. He's got his own YouTube and X channels. He's the epitome of citizen journalism. This is exactly what Andrew Breitbart envisioned. When I worked with Andrew back in 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, when he was first launching what is now known as Breitbart News, and he brought in and platformed and elevated a guy named James O'Keefe. This was the vision: citizen journalists with your smartphone, with your basic audio equipment that you can literally buy at Target or Walmart or wherever you like to buy, or at higher end places, certainly off Amazon. You can basically do a 60 Minutes report. That's what Nick Shirley did. Nick Shirley's a 23-year-old dude who for 2 years has been producing a weekly report on his channels. And in this report about Minnesota, he took existing journalism from local media outlets, from some national media outlets that have done some investigation into the fraud in Minnesota. He found an expert on the ground there who's gone through all of the government documents and seen all of the federal grants and the amounts of money that these various entities have gotten. And it's all public record. It's all out there. Anybody at CBS News or ABC News or what are they calling it? MS Now. MS Now. Darn it. Anybody there, they could have done this investigation if they wanted. Washington Post. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. I think they've got a budget. They could have done exactly what Nick Shirley did with his iPhone and with a microphone. But they didn't. New York Times, to their credit, like 2.5 weeks ago, had an article talking about some of the convictions that have happened in Minnesota so far. Strange part of that story, though. It's funny. You'll be shocked. There are like 3 judges in Minnesota, left-wing, liberal, progressive, woke, radical, Marxist Democrats who are judges, and they threw out the convictions. They threw out the convictions that had been reached by a jury's unanimous verdict. So sure, the New York Times did a little bit of coverage on it, but not what Nick Shirley did. Nick Shirley does this story. Then he goes to the addresses on these forms, the government report that shows the millions and millions and millions. It's clocked up to, well, I can tell you this. The state of Minnesota has received about $19 billion in Medicare assistance for healthcare centers and for daycare centers. Remember that number, $19 billion. Nick Shirley goes to the address of a ton of these places. They're empty. There's nothing there. On one of the places, a early childhood learning center, on the sign, they misspelled the name learning. It's a leering center, which I guess in Tim Walz's Minnesota is appropriate enough. A leering center, my friends. He went up. He started to talk to people. He said, oh, this is a child care center. It's a daycare center that's licensed for 99 people that got $2 million this last year. No one's there. Doors are locked. Middle of the day. No children anywhere to be seen. Tim Walz's reaction, well, you're all white supremacists. Of course, this is white supremacy. Remember that number I wanted you to remember? $19 billion. $19 billion for the Somali community. They've gotten a huge lion's share of it in the state of Minnesota. Minnesota got $19 billion total. Huge percentage of it went to the Somali community. The Somali community, everyone tells you how, where would this country be without the Somali community in Minnesota? They wouldn't have been able to accomplish anything. We would have never gotten a man on the moon if it weren't for the Somali community in the greater St. Paul, Minneapolis area. We would forget about inventing Velcro and Tang. I was always told that those are 2 great benefits that came out of the moon, the Apollo program. Yeah, I think they could have done better. I mean, Velcro's fine. The country that brought you the personal computer as well as the supercomputer. Country that brought you copy machines. The country that brought you, I don't know, things like electricity and mass production automobiles. We've done a lot here in this country. None of it would have happened without the Somalis. Let's not forget the Somalis who fought in the Revolutionary War and crossed the Delaware with George Washington on Christmas Eve, 1776. Let's not forget such things. We'd be nowhere without the Somalis. So the Somali community comes here, and by the way, that Somali community that's so vital that we wouldn't be able to do anything here in this country, would have never even been a country without the Somali community. The Somali community, by some estimations, are currently receiving 87% of them are receiving some kind of federal or state benefit. 87% of them are receiving some sort of welfare. But they're vital to our community. We'd be nowhere without them. $19 billion is the number I asked you to remember. The state of Minnesota got $19 billion. A huge chunk of it went to the Somali community. By some estimates from the Justice Department, $9 billion of it, half of it, has been involved in these fraudulent schemes. Half of the money that the federal government gave the state of Minnesota is fraudulent, according to the latest Justice Department estimate. They're still investigating. So, total of $19 billion, about $9 billion of it fraudulent. Here's why I wanted you to remember those two numbers. The country of Somalia, that'd be on the Horn of Africa. Familiar with it, right? It's where the pirates are, where they, take over ships. It's where we lost American soldiers in the 90s during their Civil War. It's where a communist Marxist dictator took over in 1969 and started using machetes to slaughter his opponents, different tribesmen up in the northwestern part of the Horn. Now, an independent region called Somaliland tried to declare their independence. Oh, by the way, one of the top colonels in that Marxist communist dictator's murder squads that went up there and slaughtered people happens to be the father of one Ilhan Omar, congresswoman, out of that same community in the Twin Cities, Minnesota. I know, the coincidences. It's amazing. It's like a rom-com. Yeah, so that country, Somalia, their gross domestic product this year, the entire output of that country, the economic output of the country of Somalia this year, $12 billion. So let's talk through these numbers again. The federal government gave the state of Minnesota $19 billion for welfare programs of all shades and shapes and colors and sizes. $19 billion. By some estimates, half of it, $9 billion, is all wrapped up in fraud. Most of it within the Somali community in Minnesota. So the Somali community in Minnesota is involved in about $9 billion of fraud, and the entire country of Somalia can produce $12 billion this year. Make of those numbers what you will. The question on the table is, why aren't Democrats angry about this? Why do you have to be conservative? I see, if I'm a Democrat, you know what, I'll explain in a second. And I do want to hear from you, 877-381-3811. And in a moment, I'm going to channel a liberal. I'm going to channel a Democrat. I'm going to channel Gavin Newsom, Tim Walz, Kamala Harris. Pick your poison. I'm going to pretend that I'm like them, that I have their perspective, that I have their focus, that I have their compassionate priorities about all the great things our government can do. And if you really do believe the things that Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and AOC and all of them say they care about, then you should be the angriest about this fraud. And yet they're silent. Yeah, we'll discuss that in just a moment. 877-381-3811. I'm Larry O'Connor. This is the Mark Levin Show.
Mark Levin.
Folks, I have a question for you. Do you believe America's best days are still ahead? With the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence coming up in less than a year, my friends at the Heritage Foundation are taking stock of the current situation, and they need your input. They've launched a survey on America's future to gauge how Americans feel right now about where we are as a nation and where we're headed in the next 250 years. You know, for decades, your American values have been under attack, but now, with President Trump's administration in office, we have an opportunity opportunity to turn the tide and usher in a new golden age for America. But the Heritage Foundation needs to hear from you. What policies do patriots like you most care about? What do you believe are the defining principles of America? What legacy do you believe we should pass on to the next generation? Please visit heritage.org/Levin today and share your feedback and help shape the future of America. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Larry O'Connor in for Mark Levin today. Happy New Year to you all. Merry Christmas, all that jazz. We don't waste time on Kwanzaa. Don't worry about that. I'm conservative, but I know liberals. I can channel them if I have to. I used to work in the theater entertainment business. Oh, heck, I work in radio now. You think everyone who works in radio is conservative? No, I mean, the hosts, sure, but yeah, And also, I've lived most of my life in either Los Angeles or New York or D.C. and Maryland. Okay, so I'm surrounded, right? Always have been. Maybe I'm the problem, actually, now that I think about it. So I'm a liberal. Let's just say let's say I love Gavin Newsom. Let's say I think Joe Biden and his auto pen were the greatest presidents in my lifetime. I love the idea of taking your tax dollars, giving it to the government, and have the government redistribute that to the truly needy. Or to everyday, average, economically middle-class people who just won't spend their money properly, so they need me to spend it for them because I'm smarter. I do everything better. I don't want your kids to stay in your house and have mom or dad take care of them. No, I want you to give your kids to a government-funded daycare center. That's what I want. And I don't want you to be able to get your doctor's appointments or your medical procedures on the open market and compete and pay out of pocket. No, I want you to have to use your Obamacare program that's way too expensive and get your health care from a healthcare facility that is government funded, right? We're going to set them all up and we're going to pay for all of it, right? And we're going to do it all because, well, we're just better and we're smarter and we can spend your money better than you can. So we're going to tax and we're going to tax and we're going to tax and we're going to spend and we're going to spend and we're going to spend. And just as an example, we're going to give $19 billion last year to the state of Minnesota so they can do all those things, right? Because I care about children, I care about sick people, and I care about poor people, and I care about the government being smarter than you with how you can spend your money to get those things done. Because that's what my socialist utopia is gonna bring to this nation. That's who I am. I'm a liberal, left-wing, woke, progressive Marxist. And then I turn on social media over the weekend and I see this report out of Minnesota where all that money that I just joyfully took from you at gunpoint, the theft known as taxation, and redistributed to Minnesota, all that money that I took from you and I set up for all of those wonderful things that I was going to do, it's all been flushed down the toilet. It's made people rich, criminals, rampant fraud. And by the way, what about the children? Will no one think of the children? They were supposed to have benefited from all these great programs. Well, I mean, where are the children? What about all the people who aren't getting their health care because all of these health care centers that we've set up, they're all frauds. And so now we've got people dying in the streets because they're not getting health care because they're shell companies and they're Potemkin villages. They're not real. It's all fraud. This is terrible. I mean, if I see that fraud, I'm angry. I'm upset. I'm anguished. I'm calling a press conference. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. I'm demanding answers. I'm applauding the Trump administration and FBI Director Kash Patel for throwing more resources in Minnesota to try to investigate this on steroids. That's what I'm doing, right? Because I honestly believe in those programs. I honestly believe that people need that money in these programs. And yet, Democrats don't care. They're ignoring it. Why? I have a hunch. Give us a call. It's Larry O'Connor in for Mark Levin.
We're coming upon the 250th birthday of the United States, and it has me thinking, what will America look like 250 years from now? My friends at the Heritage Foundation want to know what you think. What policies should America prioritize? What principles should carry us into the decades ahead? As America enters a new golden age, Heritage recognizes that this is the time to take stock and to be intentional about how we shape the future of America. And they can't do it without your input. So please go to heritage.org/LEVIN and let them know what you think is important. Without patriots like you stepping up and speaking up for what you believe in, America as we know it can't survive for another 250 years. Please go to heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/LEVIN. Take the survey on America's future. This survey takes less than 10 minutes to complete, but it is critical for making sure that the America we pass on to future generations is an America we're proud of. Go to heritage.org/Levin today. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
This is the show the New York Times is afraid of. Mark Levin. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
Larry O'Connor in for Mark Levin. We're talking about the fraud in Minnesota, but it's more than just Minnesota. It's more than Minnesota in terms of other states. But it's more than Minnesota in that this isn't just about the fraud in Minnesota. This is about political ideology and your approach to government and the government's role in our lives. In the virtue signaling left, personified by the media, who anytime a Republican or a conservative or an Elon Musk or a Donald Trump or a J.D. Vance or a Mark Levin or a Larry O'Connor stand up and says, hey, hold on a minute. Why are we spending all this money and things aren't getting any better? Why, look at Obamacare. I mean, how much money has been spent there, and people still complain about their health insurance. They still complain about their health care. We're no healthier than we were, and it's costing us, twice, 3 times, 4 times more. And you stand up and you say that, and the mind meld, the one-voiced beast of the left, personified by your elected officials, your news media, your government bureaucrats, your pop culture, represented in your music industry, your late-night talk shows, and it is the one voice that they all have, academia, all across the board. They all scream that that you have no compassion, that you're selfish, that you're greedy, that you don't want to help anybody, that you want people to die in the streets. I'm sorry, every single American should be absolutely disgusted by this fraud. Every single Democrat, every single Republican, every single Libertarian, every single Marxist. You're Zoran Mamdani, and you're about to institute a $100 billion, all-encompassing universal child care plan in the city of New York City, and you're seeing this in Minnesota. You should be outraged. You should be screaming from the top of the Empire State Building like King Kong, calling for people's heads. But you're not. No one on the left cares about this. In fact, they want to cover it up. They want to ignore it. They want to hide it. They don't want to talk about it. They want to pretend it's not real. And if you stand up and say something about it, they want to call you racist. It makes no sense until you realize they don't actually care about people. And it's not really about the children. It's not really about people dying in the streets. It's not about any of those things. It's just about growing political and economic power. And, oh, by the way, one other reason, real fast, just to set aside the political power aspect that permeates every single Marxist behavior in this country. There's one other thing. Ask yourself this. I won't give you the answer. Just ask yourself this question, and maybe you can come up with it yourself. When there's a giant multi-billion-dollar fraud scheme, and there are people in political power who are, responsible for growing the programs and funding the programs that are now being defrauded, and you're not upset about it, and in fact you want to ignore it and pretend it didn't happen, what does that really say about you? I mean, what's a logical conclusion one can reach when the people who created the program demanded funding for the program and now see that the program's being robbed blind, and yet you don't want to say anything about that? What can we assume about your connection to these programs. 877-381-3811. Why aren't Democrats upset about this? We're going to start with line 5. That would be Robert, Santa Clara, California. Beautiful Santa Clara, California. Robert, you're first up. I'm Larry O'Connor.
Hey,
and
Larry.
we disconnected.
I have
Robert.
a friend who's there.
Oh, no, you're there. Okay, go ahead,
There?
Robert. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I have an Eritrean friend who's an elderly gentleman. He tells us, because it's an adjacent Abyssinian country, Eritrea, Ethiopia. He basically told me it's in their mentality to quadruple dip welfare, and they're actually very happy that they're being caught, the other Abyssinian cultures, because, this money's going to Al-Shabaab. It's being put into these other countries. They're building themselves houses in the Sudan, in Ethiopia, and they're also funding Muslim terrorist groups that kill other Christians. So this is a serious issue where this money is going, and they have no shame in quadruple dipping welfare and grifting.
Yeah.
That's just, and other Abyssinian people know this, and it puts them in a bad light. And they like that this is going down. There's
a lot of what you're saying here that rings true, most specifically about what other ethnicities and nationalities in that part of East Africa think about Somalis. You hear it all the time. There's no secret there. And I appreciate the observation, my friend. Thank you for calling in. I'll just expand on that because I just want to – it's funny. As soon as you say something like that, people immediately will start calling you racist, which makes no sense because he was specifically drawing on the fact that other black nationalities and ethnicities there characterize Somalis specifically as being prone to corruption and fraud. So how can you be racist if you're actually siding with other people of color? But that doesn't stop anybody from calling anybody a racist. I will say this. I don't think it's a secret that the Somali government has been corrupt since 1969. And most specifically, it has been corrupt in a way that all communist dictatorships and authoritarians were corrupt in the 20th century. And that is you had a small handful of people that benefited on the oppression and confiscation of wealth of the rest of the people in that country. That's exactly what you're seeing here. You've got people gaming the system and gaming the government and getting government money, which is your money. This is tax dollars. And by the way, for everybody who thinks, oh, well, who cares? Minnesota, they get the government they elected. No, this is your money. My God, I sure hope you realize that this is not Minnesota taxpayer money. This is your money. This is federal money. This is all money that Obama and Biden all confiscated from you through the IRS. This is people in Mississippi and Alabama and Oklahoma and Wyoming who dutifully send their checks into the federal government. And then they took your money and they gave it to these criminals in Minnesota. And the kind of fraud and the kind of corruption and the kind of outright theft that you see in Minnesota focused within the Somali community is exactly the kind of fraud and corruption that you see in Somalia. Now, that's not a racial observation at all. Has absolutely nothing to do with the color of the people's skin. But let me just say something about this, because I keep hearing race. The only reason people are caring about this is race. The only reason people are focusing on it is race. I think one of the only reasons that this hasn't gotten any attention up until now is because of race. It's clear that the politicians there were terrified to be called racist. How do I know that? Because that's immediately what a lot of the politicians did the second that the story came out, is to call anybody drawing attention to it racist. Number two, they're terrified to disrupt the political influence and power that they get from the Somali community. Oh, these guys, are you kidding? The voting bloc of Somalis there can swing an election for the Democrats. They're the captain now, and the Democrats know it. Okay, so that's a big part of it, too. The reason that this didn't get attention is because of racism, because of the soft bigotry of low expectations. Now, strike that. The outright bigotry of low expectations. Where you had Democrats and you had people in the media in Minnesota who literally don't think that the Somali community is capable of anything better than this. Oh, you know how those people are, they say to themselves as they drink their very bad beer in Minnesota. Yeah, that the racism here is for people not expecting any more from the community. But I've got one other thing to say about this that I sure hope resonates with you, and I sure hope you can repeat it to your liberal brother-in-law when they come over for New Year's Eve dinner this weekend, or to maybe watch some football with you, and they start calling you racist because you think that this fraud is an absolute outrage. I just want you to say something to them. Yeah, think about it for a second. If you were the member of a racial or ethnic minority that has just come to this country over the last 20 years, and you find out that in your community you have, we keep hearing, oh, it's just, 80, 90 people who have committed all this fraud, which is a lie, by the way. I'll blow apart that lie in a moment. But let's say you believe that this is a handful of people in the Somali community, or whatever community you belong to, Mesopotamian Americans, or, whatever hyphenated group you belong to. You're the minority. You're very easily identifiable by the community at large. You live amongst yourselves, just like the Somalis in the Twin Cities, okay? You're a part of that community, and you find out that this international scandal is going on, and it's at the heart of your community. And you are innocent, and you know the people of your community are really good, upstanding citizens who are the backbone of the community, and our nation wouldn't be anything without you. Let me ask you something. Would you stay silent? Would you circle the wagons? Would you play keep away with the truth? Would you slam the door at someone with a camera and a microphone and stay behind locked doors and not say a damn thing? Would you stand up and accuse anybody who's trying to get the facts about this fraud and about this criminal activity? Would you call them names and try to shut them down? If you truly were innocent, if your community truly was innocent. See, I don't know. Maybe I'm made of different stuff than people who grew up in the Horn of Africa and came here as refugees. Maybe I can't walk a mile in their sandals, and I'll never quite know what it's like to be a Somali American. But I know for me, for my community, for whatever group that I belong to, where suddenly some people within my group behaves abhorrently and in a criminal fashion, in a despicable way, in a way that makes us all look bad, I don't know. I'd be going overboard to try to flesh out the bad guys. I would be joining with the authorities to root out the fraud. I would be doing whatever I could to demonstrate to the general public that this does not reflect on our entire community, that we are good, law-abiding, patriotic Americans, and we are as disgusted and outraged by this criminal behavior as anyone else. In fact, we're more outraged and disgusted by this behavior because my group should be better than that. We're grateful to be here. We're guests. We were welcomed to this country. And the last thing we want is for the people who have welcomed us to think that we're criminals and we take advantage of this system. And those horrible, horrible members of my community that have done this, they're the bad apples, and I'm going to work with you and do everything I can to root it out and convict all of these people of fraud. Why aren't they acting like that? Why don't you see that? Why don't you hear anything from any of the members? All I've seen from people who have spoken out, is to stand up and tell you how amazing and wonderful they are. There's nothing to see here, and how dare you shine a light on the corruption. You're the problem. You're at fault. And now, if you really want to be my ally, if you really want to be on my side, it's incumbent on you to throw a hijab on and do a press conference. That's what we saw. The lieutenant governor of Minnesota, a woman whiter than the snow on your front yard right now in many parts of this country, running for Senate for the Democrats, naturally decided that she was going to throw a hijab on and give a press conference to show solidarity with the Somali community, with Somalis standing by, nodding and smiling as if it was a terrorist video without the AK-47s. And I would think, again, as a guest of the country, I know I would behave differently. If I truly believed that this was such a small handful of people that are making us all look bad, I would be walking over broken glass to prove to the country at large that this is not who we are and those people do not represent us, and I'm going to demonstrate it. I'm going to prove it. I'm going to help you root out this fraud. Why aren't they doing that? Why aren't they doing that? 877-381-3811. It's Larry O'Connor in for the great one, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin.
Folks, I have a question for you. Do you believe America's best days are still ahead? With the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence coming up in less than a year, my friends at the Heritage Foundation are taking stock of the current situation, and they need your input. They've launched a survey on America's future to gauge how Americans feel right now about where we are as a nation and where we're headed in the next 250 years. You know, for decades, your American values have been under attack, but now, with President Trump's administration in office, we have an opportunity to turn the tide and usher in a new golden age for America. But the Heritage Foundation needs to hear from you. What policies do patriots like you most care about? What do you believe are the defining principles of America? What legacy do you believe we should pass on to the next generation? Please visit heritage.org/Levin today and share your feedback and help shape the future of America. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Larry O'Connor in for Mark Levin, and real fast, I mentioned it's only 80 people or so. We'll get your calls in a second. Here's Tim Walz the other day.
And I think the biggest thing on this is just making sure that we're educating the population. And again, this is 80 people or so that have been convicted in this, maybe some more in that out of a...
Yeah, okay, so when he says that becomes some talking point that people repeat all the time. Oh, you guys are making a big deal out of this. It's only 80 people. All right, first of all, it's a lie, and I'll expose the lie in a second. But beyond that, I always like to do this when you're in a political argument with somebody and they're not being truthful. They're lying. They're throwing fake statistics at you, and you know that they're wrong. Before you blow apart the statistics and show him why he's being deceitful, stop for a minute and just say, you know what? Let's stipulate that, even if it's true. Even if Tim Walz is telling the truth here, and it's only 80 people in the Somali community. What do you mean only 80 people? We're talking about $8 or $9 billion. And only 80 people were able to do that? And you're not running around like with your hair on fire, screaming about how awful this is? Why is this man not concerned? But even beyond that, I'm sure you heard it, but just in case, because this is what happens in the cable news and social media. You see a stat like this, and you don't really think about what you're seeing. You don't think about the words you've just heard. Listen again.
Committed by white men asking us to do more about that. I think it's crime in general. And I think the biggest thing on this is just making sure that we're educating the population. And again, this is 80 people or so that have been convicted in this.
There it was. I'm sure you heard it that time. This is 80 people or so that have been convicted. That is irrelevant. I don't care how many people. We've got a murder spree in Chicago right now. You know, on any given day, you might have 20 people murdered a night. But the good news is we've only convicted 5 people of murder this year. So we're really only talking about 5 people. It's not that big a deal. The number of people convicted is irrelevant, especially when you've got a corrupt fraud like Keith Ellison as the Attorney General. When you've got a corrupt, incompetent fraud like Tim Walz as the governor. And suddenly you see, Anderson Cooper and Jake Tapper repeating, well, just to be clear, there's only 80 people so far that have been convicted, as if that's a data point that is relevant in any way to the scope of the crime. In fact, the fact that only 80 people have been convicted is part of the scandal. But that's what you'll see on cable news. That's what Morning Joe will say. That's what George Stephanopoulos will say, because that's the media we have right now. But you're smarter than that. You're here. You know better. We've got more on this topic. And again, why aren't Democrats upset about it? I'll tell you why in a moment. It's Larry O'Connor in for the great one, Mark Levin.
This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
It's Larry O'Connor in for the great one, Mark Levin, 877-381-3811. I'm the morning show host on WMAL in Washington, D.C. I also host the daily 12 noon live stream video podcast for Town Hall Media. It's called Larry. You can check that out on any platform you watch that stuff on. I'm talking about the it's funny how it's become the media is so insidious about this, and they work with the Democrats to get it done. I was just about to say it myself. I was about to say we're talking about the Somali fraud story out of Minnesota. It's not a Somali fraud story. Why are they calling it Somali fraud? They're the ones who call us racist or xenophobic for, talking about this story and connecting it to the Somalis. Meanwhile, they're the ones who are actually calling it Somali fraud. It's not Somali fraud. It's government fraud. It's Democrat fraud. That's what it is. I want you to listen to a little bit of Nick Shirley's expose here. He's the one who really brought greater attention to this story. And he did a great job in doing so. And as I mentioned earlier, most of his focus here has been on utilizing already pre-existing investigations that other journalistic endeavors have engaged in. And then he sort of extrapolated it all together, followed some leads, pulled some government reports, and then went and knocked on the doors of these places. Just good old shoe leather journalism. Here's the opening of his show.
We'd like to ask where the money's going. What do you guys think about the fraud that's taking place here in Minnesota?
I don't think anybody is enabling fraud to happen.
Hold Governor Walz accountable for this.
What was this money spent on? 1.26 million. What was that money spent on? There aren't any kids.
Answer the question. Are there children? There's no children inside this building. Potentially the largest fraud scandal in U.S. history is taking place in Minnesota, as literally billions of dollars have been funneled through Somali-ran fraudulent businesses. So much fraud, it could actually almost replace the entire GDP of Somalia. These fraudsters have worked hand in hand with the Minnesota government as they enabled billions of dollars to be given to fraudulent businesses underneath welfare purposes. Some of this money eventually landed in the hands of terrorist groups in Somalia like the Al-Shabaab, and others enriched themselves all at the U.S. taxpayers' expense. And in this video we will break down all of the fraud from start to finish, from going to the fraudulent businesses and confronting the people who are making millions of dollars from the government. And we will also be confronting the incompetent government leaders who let this fraud happen. And to make this happen, I met up with a man who's been doing his own investigation for years now, as he has seen the fraud firsthand. His name is David. Let's get into this and be prepared to be shocked.
Nick Shirley, 23 years old. He's been doing it for 2 years, these kind of YouTube videos. This one obviously blew up 120 million views just on X. YouTube even more. That report right there is the kind of thing 60 Minutes used to do. Back when they cared about journalism, back when they weren't shills and propagandists for the machine, the left-wing liberal progressive government machine that works hand in glove with the Democrat Party and with the media. And that's why my friend and mentor Andrew Breitbart used to call this the Democrat media complex. They all work together. And by the way, it's not a conspiracy theory or anything. It's just reality. They all work together. They all have the same goals. They're all on the same side. Is that shocking? Ask Jake Tapper what he did before he became a journalist. Ask George Stephanopoulos what he did before he became a journalist. How about Chuck Todd? What did he do before he... How about Joe Scarborough? How about Mika Brzezinski or her dad? I mean, it goes on and on and on. That Jen Psaki, redhead there on MS Now, what did she do before she got her job as a TV host and journalist? That's fine. But that's what it is. It's why I wrote one of my two. It's funny. I wrote 2 books last year. And if you forgot anybody's Christmas presents, here's the book. I wrote one book called Shameless Liars. And it's all about the media, about the corrupt, irrelevant corporate legacy media, how they got everything wrong in the 2024 presidential election, and how Trump defeated them in the same way he defeated Biden and Kamala Harris, and how the new media, represented by Nick Shirley here with this expose, has changed everything, and how it will never be the same again, and we will never be beholden to the corporate gatekeepers in the media as long as we can keep these platforms free. That book's called Shameless Liars, #1 book earlier in the year. I came out in February. My other book, I wrote a novel. It's my first novel. It's kind of a government corruption thriller. It's called The Corruption Protocol. It's actually called Doge Squad. Doge Squad is the name of this series. It's loosely based on Doge. And it's all about government corruption. It's all about this beast. It's all about the vested interests that keep the machine going, funds the machine. And this is the cycle that we see in Minnesota that I lay out in my novel, because the novel is very, very loosely based on what really goes on in Washington, D.C. right now. The only difference is, in my book, the good guys win in the end. And we actually catch the bad guys and expose their fraud. And people go to jail. But what happens in my book is what happens in Washington, D.C., and what happens in Minnesota right here. Here's what happens. You got Democrats who control the government in that state, and for 12 of the last 17 years have controlled the government in Washington, D.C. And so they set up all of these programs, all of these welfare programs, all of these daycare programs, all of these healthcare programs. They brag about it. They get votes by saying, I'm going to do this thing, and we're going to help all these people. And all you good-hearted liberals and some of you people who are wishy-washy, who don't like to be called names and don't think deep enough about these issues to actually say, wait a minute, since when does government actually help people in times like this? They always make things worse. It's like the people who voted for Zohran Mamdani. It's too expensive to live in New York. And the solution is the government will fix it. The government has never made anything less affordable. The only way an elected official can make things more affordable for you is to lower your taxes and to cut regulations. That is it. And I assure you that's not what Zohran Mamdani plans to do. All right, so they get all these votes, they get power, they set up these programs. Then they fund the programs with your money, they confiscate it, taxation is theft, there's no two ways about it, except that you voted for your thief. They take your money. They fund the programs. And then it's always politically connected groups or individuals who have some sort of relationship with those very same elected officials who end up creating these organizations that get all the tax dollars that are supposed to fix the problems. Now, in Minnesota, it's more blatant than usual. These are just shell companies. They're storefronts. They're misspelled signs hanging over a door in a ghetto, and then they get $2 million. So they go through the process of getting the government grant because the elected official has well-placed advisors that are in the community that say, here, let me show you how to do this. So they show them how to do it. They set up the money. They set up the fraud scheme. They catch all the money. And then what are those fraudsters, the people who have set up the little shell corporation with the misspelled sign above the door in the ghetto that's getting $2 million a year? What do? Well, they take a good percentage of that money and they make a political donation back to the party and back to the candidates and back to the super PACs that keep those Democrats in power that set up the program in the first place. And it just goes on and on and on and on. What they didn't take into account was Trump winning the election and actually starting to do something about this stuff, and citizen journalism. See, if they've got the media on their side, if Elon Musk had not purchased Twitter, we wouldn't know about this story. Nick Shirley's report would never get published. He may have tried to do it, but it would have been deplatformed immediately. He would have been censored. It would have been called unverified and unsupported and fake news, and he'd be under investigation. He'd be demonetized and deplatformed. And that's across the board on all the other social. The only reason that YouTube is free now, the only reason Facebook is free relatively, only reason that you've got other platforms is because Elon Musk bought Twitter and said, enough of this. We're not going to do it anymore. And the other places were shamed into following suit, that and Trump winning the election. Of course, he wouldn't have won the election had Elon Musk not purchased Twitter. It all comes back to free speech, free, unfettered speech. Which, again, I wrote about in my book, Shameless Liars, whole section there about the First Amendment, Madison's vision, the fact that you are the media, the fact that the First Amendment protection of the press, you ever wonder how protection of the press doesn't really match the other freedoms in the First Amendment, right? You have freedom of speech, you have freedom of free expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of to practice your own faith, right? Those are all your personal freedoms that you can do. And then suddenly you throw in there freedom of the press. Suddenly Madison and Hamilton and the founders, Jay Washington, they all wanted to make sure that reporters were protected. On the First Amendment, the people who own newspapers or pamphlets or eventually, yes, the internet and television stations, they didn't envision it, but they wrote the First Amendment in such a way that it was applicable to all forms of modern communication. You think we need to make sure every single American citizen has the right to personal speech, personal assembly, personal religious faith. And, oh, by the way, let's just protect reporters while we're at it. No. The freedom of the press is exactly like those other freedoms. Freedom of the press is not about Jim Acosta and George Stephanopoulos. Freedom of the press is about you. It's your freedom. Not just to express yourself and publish your own ideas and your own thoughts and your own investigations and your own efforts to hold your government accountable. But also, you are the one who benefits from the government getting out of the way of censoring the media, the press, reporters, pamphleteers, newspapers, whatever form or platform. It's for you. It's not for the reporter. It's for you. Freedom of the press is for the American citizen, because this thing doesn't work if we can't get unencumbered, free information. None of it works. The Constitution requires it. Our free constitutional republic utilizing democracy to choose our elected representatives requires free press. If it's not free, then it's all a game. It's all... the game is rigged. It's fixed. Which is exactly what we saw in 2020. Exactly what we saw. We couldn't report about the Hunter Biden laptop. We couldn't report the truth about the origins of the COVID virus. We couldn't report the truth about social distancing. We couldn't report the truth about all of the restrictions that the government put on us during the pandemic, including forced mail-in ballots and drop boxes, which exploded voter fraud, but then you weren't allowed to talk about the voter fraud. And when the government stifles all of that expression, all of that information, all of that reporting, all of those opinions, all of that analysis, all of that speech, when the government stifles it, look what happens. Joe Biden ends up in the White House, and we have the 4 years that we had. That's why what Nick Shirley did was so important. And that's why all those other places that benefited from the government control, it's not like there was no media. Just like in every Orwell story, the authoritarians got to pick and choose who the winners were. And that was NBC, CBS, ABC. They were fine. That's why they're not talking about this story. They don't want you to know about it. They don't want you to be informed. But you are, because you're right here. More on the other side. 877-381-3811. It's Larry O'Connor in for the great one, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin.
As a consumer, you can carry the success or failure of businesses in the palm of your hand. Their success can depend on your decision to spend money with them or their competitor. Well, my friends at Pure Talk would like to say thank you from the bottom of their hearts for choosing Pure Talk for your wireless needs. Because of you, they've had a record-breaking year. Because of your generosity through their Roundup for Charity program, they've been able to donate over $500,000 to America's Warrior Partnership, who stands on the front lines of helping to prevent veteran suicide. Your patronage has allowed Pure Talk to donate 1,000 hand-sewn Made in America flags to your fellow veterans. And when you choose Pure Talk as your wireless provider, you help Pure Talk support American jobs right here in our country. Like I said, as a consumer, you have the power to make or break companies. And with the money the big wireless guys throw around on advertising, you're inundated with offers everywhere you look. So from everyone in the Pure Talk family, thank you for your trust, and God bless you.
Larry O'Connor in for the great one. Mark Levin, 877-381-3811. How about we go to line 6 in Brunswick, Maine. It's Lisa. Lisa, Maine, you got your own host issues up there, don't you? Lisa? Oh, that's too bad. Lisa's been holding for a while. All right. Oh, now I want to make sure I have enough time. I'll tell you what. We'll take the rest of your calls on the other end. Tyreek, hold up. Paul, hold up. We'll get to you in a moment. I did leave one question hanging there when I said, hey, think about it. If a Democrat who set up the program and funded the program and bragged about the program and fought for the program and criticized the political opponents like Republicans for not supporting the program. You have so vested an interest in making sure that program is great and wonderful and pristine and functioning and keeps going. And then suddenly you've got this big fraud scandal there and you don't want to talk about it. You want to ignore it. You want to wish it away. Why would you do that? I don't know. I'm just going to throw it out there. Could be wrong, but maybe it's because you're part of the scheme. Maybe because you are getting rich off the thing, too. I don't know that for a fact, of course. I'm just following the facts and just throwing it out there, and I think that's something that you should consider. Oh, by the way, this is totally unrelated. New York Post article. Ilhan Omar's husband's $30 million firm quietly scrubs names from his website as squad member faces mounting questions on sudden wealth amid Minnesota welfare. That's right. She was a impoverished refugee from war-torn Civil War Somalia when she came here a handful of years ago. And when she first took office in 2019, she had a net worth of negative $25,000 because she had no assets and she was carrying student and car debt. Now Ilhan Omar has a net worth anywhere between $6 million and $30 million. But she does not want to talk about this fraud in Minnesota, especially as it relates to the Somali community, her congressional district. Weird, isn't it? That's weird. 877-381-3811, Larry O'Connor in for the great one, Mark Levin.
As a consumer, you can carry the success or failure of businesses in the palm of your hand. Their success can depend on your decision to spend money with them or their competitor. Well, my friends at Pure Talk would like to say thank you from the bottom of their hearts for choosing Pure Talk for your wireless needs. Because of you, they've had a record-breaking year. Because of your generosity through their Roundup for Charity program, they've been able to donate over $500,000 to America's Warrior Partnership, who stands on the front lines of helping to prevent veteran suicide. Your patronage has allowed Pure Talk to donate 1,000 hand-sewn Made in America flags to your fellow veterans. And when you choose Pure Talk as your wireless provider, you help Pure Talk support American jobs right here in our country. Like I said, as a consumer, you have the power to make or break companies. And with the money the big wireless guys throw around on advertising, you're inundated with offers everywhere you look. So from everyone in the Pure Talk family, thank you for your trust, and God bless you.
Don't ask him for middle ground. There is no middle ground. Talk with Mark Levin now at 877-381-3811.
Larry O'Connor in for the great one, Mark Levin. Ilhan Omar gets voted into office in 2019. She claims a net worth of negative $25,000 to $65,000 because she has no assets and she carries student and car debt. 6 years later, she has assets totaling anywhere between $6 and $30 million based on her latest financial disclosure. And it's her district that's at the center of what's now estimated to be a $9 billion fraud scheme focused entirely within the Somalia community. What a country. America really is the land of opportunity, isn't it? But don't you talk about it. Don't you do a report about it. Don't you mention it. You're racist. That doesn't work anymore. Do they know that doesn't work anymore? Do they know how they have neutered themselves from any kind of power with that fake accusation? Now, if they don't, they're going to find out soon enough. All right. As promised before, Lisa in Maine, you are next up here. I'm Larry O'Connor. Thanks for calling Mark Levin.
Hi, Larry. I love your show.
Thank you.
I love it when you're on Mark Halprin and Dan Turrentine.
Oh, thank you.
I love you the mostest.
That's very kind. I'll be on. That's the morning meeting with Mark Halprin, and I'll be doing it starting next Monday. I'll be on.
Okay, yes, that's very good. And I am a Mainer, so I live in Maine. I'm from Maine, and I do not like the fact that Joe Brzezinski and Morning Mika have a house here. And I'm starting to not like Tucker Carlson having a home here. So I'm getting I feel like I'm being pushed out by the Somalis that live in Lewiston. So I'm very
yes.
upset.
Whenever the media types come in, there go the neighborhood. Yes,
I'm very upset about these things. And,
I might have to get a place up there, Lisa, just to offset it a little bit.
Oh dear God, you'd love it here. Oh, you would never go back to Virginia area ever. I lived in Virginia Beach, and I would never go back. Maine is my home. It's the bestest.
I've heard you've got a bit of a Somali community up there as well, and lo and behold, there's also some reports of government fraud.
I do, and that that's what I wanted to say, because there's Minneapolis is going to make Maine look like a day off, but still there is a big problem in Maine, in Lewiston, Maine, and Portland, Maine. And there's a big Somali population, and I think there's some fraud. I don't want to, just tar the whole population. But
I know, darling. And Lisa, if I may, I know that because you're a compassionate, normal, feeling, intellectual, generous, charitable American, and of course we don't. We don't. By saying that there is rampant fraud within the Somali community, you're not saying that every single person from Somalia living in America is a crook. But that's why, Lisa, and again, and I love that you're so compassionate that you didn't want to suddenly, sound like that or falsely accuse somebody. But here's the problem. If you are a Somali American and you didn't do anything wrong, and you know that there is corruption in your community, why aren't you leading the charge?
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's my point. Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, Lisa. God bless you. Merry New Year. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. And we'll see you Monday morning on the Morning Report there with Halprin. Thank you for that call. It reminds me of the movie, a great movie, The Untouchables. What an incredible movie that is. David Mamet's script. You remember Kevin Costner and Sean Connery, of course, and Robert De Niro. But you know who was brilliant in that movie? And it wasn't his debut, but it might as well have been because it was his breakout role. Andy Garcia. You remember Andy Garcia's character? He was a cop. He was an Italian cop. And The Untouchables, Elliot Ness, FBI agents, back when the FBI was, an organization that without hesitation we could admire. Elliot Ness goes to Chicago with the responsibility of finally bringing in Al Capone and reining in the Italian mob because the government and the police were so corrupt. They were all entangled in it. And so it took, feds. It took the untouchables, right? That was the whole point. You can't touch them. You can't bribe them. They're not part of the corrupt scheme in Chicago. And when he was recruiting, he and Sean Connery are recruiting police officers who are going to be able to go after the mob without being bribed, without being on the take, without, being corrupt. And so they go to the rookies. They go to the training police academy, and they find Andy Garcia, who's Italian. You remember how Sean Connery, starts calling him all these names, and Andy Garcia, his character, hates the mob because he's an Italian American. He wants to be a cop. He wants to stop the mob. He wants to get the criminals behind bars because they're making the Italians look bad. Where's the Andy Garcia from the Somali community? Why are they all circling the wagons? Why are they all running interference? Why are they all coming after us? Because we're pointing out what's going on. Why are they making people like Sweet Lisa in Maine having to, trip over her tongue because she's pointing out the obvious fraud that's going on and then saying, oh, but I'm not saying all Somalis. I'm not saying that. I don't want to cast aspersions on the whole community. We shouldn't have to jump through hoops and make that proclamation. And the good, patriotic, law-abiding, tax-paying Somalis should be the loudest voices we hear right now. Where are they? Where are they indeed? Tariq is on line 3. Now, Tariq is in Baltimore, Maryland. The stone's throw from where I'm sitting right now. Hey, Tariq. Boy, the wind is pretty rough here in Maryland, isn't it?
Yes. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for calling.
Yes, Republicans and conservatives have the point of view, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Democrats have the point of view, if it ain't broke, break it. These people are trying to destroy America. So my slogan for a proposed American immigration policy is no Somalis, no tamales. If they can't cut it here in America without being on public assistance, please don't come here, and please leave if you're already here. Mr. Biden could not stop successive waves of buses bringing thousands, tens of thousands of people into our country. Trump has them self-deport. That's fantastic.
It really is.
That brings me to the question, are you familiar with the explanation of why Christopher Columbus was the world's first Democrat?
Oh, boy. No, I'm not. Please tell me, Tariq.
He didn't know where he was going.
Yes.
When he got there, he didn't know where he was. When he got back, he didn't know where he had been, and he did it all with somebody else's money. You like that?
Happy New Year, Tariq. I do. Thank you for calling from Baltimore, Maryland. That was good. Although I don't think the no Somalis, no tamales thing is going to fly. As much as I appreciate the Sondheim-esque inner rhyme, I don't know if it'll fly. But you make a good point about going back to the time when if you wanted to immigrate to this country, you needed to have a sponsor that was already here and would vouch for you so that you weren't on government assistance. The most astounding stat of this entire expose on what's going on with the Somali community, there's two stats that are astounding. The Somali community in Minnesota. The first one is the number of illegal immigrants. We opened our doors. We opened our arms and welcomed these people back when their country was a bleep hole and that there was, massacres and carnage and dysfunction and no running water. Mogadishu was a nightmare and a mess. They were in the midst of a civil war. There were people who needed refuge. We offered the refuge. They were refugees. We gave them asylum. Many of them ended up, you get asylum, you go one of two ways. You either wait until things get better and then you go home. Hell, we've got people from El Salvador in this country who are refugees who sought asylum, temporary asylum, because of, I think it was either an earthquake or a volcano 30 years ago. And they're still in this country under temporary protective status for 30 years because of a natural disaster in El Salvador. So, you figure you come here, you're a refugee, you seek refuge, we take care of you, we'll give you a place to, live, we'll help you out, and then you go back to your country when things are normal. Of course, Somalia is still a basket case, so many of those people ended up becoming citizens. They were naturalized, and, they're the backbone of the community, I keep hearing. So the number one astounding statistic out of this absolute corruption in the Twin Cities is that I believe I said it was nearly half or just over half of the Somalis currently living in the Twin Cities are actually illegal immigrants. Meaning they did not come in that wave of refugees after the Civil War. They've come in the intervening 20, 25 years. Their friends, their family members, they didn't come when asylum was granted. They stayed back, and now they keep coming, and they keep coming, and they keep coming, and then they stay illegally, and nothing's ever done. So whenever you hear Ilhan Omar screaming about what an important and vital community this is because they are legal and they were granted asylum, yeah, she's right about, at this point, a minority of the Somalis who are living up there. Half, if not most of them, have come since then illegally. And the second most astounding stat, and really is the cherry on top, is that the estimates are now upwards to over 80%, if not close to 90%. I think the number was 87% of the Somali nationals who live in the Minneapolis area, whether they're citizens or not, are receiving some kind of government assistance. That's not how a civilization survives. That's not how a government survives. Incredible. 877-381-3811. I did what Tariq just said, though, there about immigration. I do want to spin off of that with a second topic as soon as we wrap things up here on the Minneapolis Somali story. But we've still got more to say. So let's go to line 4. Now, we've got Paul in Boise, Idaho. Boy, Idaho is a beautiful place, and I love Boise. But I don't think you have a vibrant How has Boise, Idaho been able to thrive without a vibrant Somali community there as the backbone of your society?
Well, we have a huge Hispanic community, which is even better.
There you go.
They love to work. They're happy to be here.
All right.
They're friendly people.
Beautiful.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah. One of my best friends is Hispanic. He was born in the same town as them, invaded him, and
wow, there's a coincidence. All right, what's on your mind tonight?
Well, I like the idea of you reporting on the 19 billion. The last report I heard was 9 billion, so I learned something tonight.
Oh, let me just make sure the stats are good. The 9 billion is still operable. We believe it's $9 billion in fraud. 19 billion is the total amount that was given to the state of Minnesota through these programs. So in other words, half of it is fraudulent.
Right. Okay. So you'll never see a penny of that. It's gone forever. Forever.
It's gone forever, my friend. And thank you for the call tonight. I appreciate it. I like that little song too. It's gone forever, and they will want more. That's how this works. In fact, if Republicans in the state of Minnesota or Republicans in Washington, D.C. say that in light of these stories and in light of these events, let's just freeze the number for Minnesota. Let's freeze it at 19 billion. By the way, these are all funds that were supposed to go to the state of Minnesota because of COVID, which is long gone. So it should all go away now. They shouldn't get any of this money. But if a Republican says, let's just freeze it at 19 billion and not give them any more, they will scream like you are killing grandma and killing babies. And of course, we know the only political party who's really into killing babies around here. But the question of immigration just came up, and I would like to pivot a quick, because we're looking back at 2025 and Trump's first year of his second term. And if I told you last year, I was doing this program this very night last year, was we were on the cusp of the golden age and the new Trump term. If I had told you 1 year ago tonight when I was hosting this program behind this fine microphone that at the end of his first year, Donald Trump will have deported 2.5 million illegal immigrants, and 2/3 of them would have self-deported on their own, would you have taken that as a W? Would you have even believed that was possible? Yeah. A little bit more on Trump's success with immigration and how he might be suffering and being a victim of his own success in just a moment. My name's Larry O'Connor. It's the Mark Levin Show.
Mark Levin.
As a consumer, you can carry the success or failure of businesses in the palm of your hand. Their success can depend on your decision to spend money with them or their competitor. Well, my friends at Pure Talk would like to say thank you from the bottom of their hearts for choosing Pure Talk for your wireless needs. Because of you, they've had a record-breaking year. Because of your generosity through their Roundup for Charity program, they've been able to donate over $500,000 to America's Warrior Partnership, who stands on the front lines of helping to prevent veteran suicide. Your patronage has allowed Pure Talk to donate 1,000 hand-sewed Made in America flags to your fellow veterans. And when you choose Pure Talk as your wireless provider, you help Pure Talk support American jobs right here in our country. Like I said, as a consumer, you have the power to make or break companies. And with the money the big wireless guys throw around on advertising, you're inundated with offers everywhere you look. So from everyone in the Pure Talk family, thank you for your trust, and God bless you.
Larry O'Connor in for the great one, Mark Levin. Coming up in our next hour, we're going to give you some highlights of the president's remarks with Benjamin Netanyahu at Mar-a-Lago. But we're also going to spend some time looking back at this last year, the president's first year. And I want to hear from you, 877-381-3811. What were his biggest achievements in your mind? What looking back now, was the high point for you of Trump's first year in office for his second term? It is astounding when you look at it. As I just said, if he could shut down the border and not one person crossed the border illegally, and on top of that, 2.5 million are sent packing in just the first year, you would have said, no way, no chance, not going to happen. If I had told you it would you be a happy man? Would you be a happy woman? Of course you would, and that's exactly what happened. How quickly was that border shut down? People don't even want to talk about the border anymore in Washington, D.C. Think about this. Gavin Newsom wants to be president. Josh Shapiro, I'm told, Pete Buttigieg wants to be president. Maybe Kamala will run again. Tim Walz, who knows? They got to answer a very simple question. Will you reverse the Trump policy at the border, or will you keep it exactly the way it is right now? President Trump has shut down the border, and there have been no illegal encounters and crossing since April. If you are president, will you go back and implement the policies Joe Biden had put in place? Yes or no? And if you intend to keep President Trump's policies, are you in fact admitting that he was right? Can a Democrat answer that question? I don't think they can. 605,000 illegal immigrants were apprehended and deported forcibly in the last year. 1.9 million left voluntarily, for a total of 2.5 million, and they're just getting started. And there are no new illegal immigrants crossing our border to the south. And people still think that the president isn't doing enough. He's a victim of his own success because it seems so easy. We'll get into that and a whole lot more next. It's Larry O'Connor in for Mark Levin.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
I'm Larry O'Connor. I'm sitting in for the great one, Mark Levin, on one of our last broadcasts of 2025. I'm going to be back on tomorrow, by the way, as Mark is enjoying a well-deserved vacation. No one works harder than Mark, and that's coming from a guy who works pretty hard. Mark Levin is brilliant and iconic and inspirational and an incredible mentor and a great friend. And people who do what I do and do radio, specifically radio. I'm not talking about being an influencer. I'm not talking about being a podcaster even. No offense to podcasting. I podcast. People who are in broadcast radio, on radio stations with call letters, with the guidelines and guardrails that the FCC and our corporate owners so kindly provide for us. And I only jokingly point that out because unlike podcasts and unlike influencers on social media, when you have to communicate what you want to communicate with the passion and drive and, yes, engaging entertainment value that is required within the confines of FCC protocols and adhering to a contract that you have with a major corporation, it takes talent. It takes energy. It takes focus. It takes thoughtfulness. It takes wisdom. Mark Levin is the best of the best. His show is an education, and his show is hilarious. And his show is inspirational, and it's maddening. And even when you disagree with Mark, as everybody disagrees with everyone at some point, you still have respect for where he's coming from, and you learn something from Mark Levin. Not since Rush Limbaugh, the greatest of them all, has someone been able to do what Mark does, night after night, on hundreds of stations. You know, it is, and I again, I just want to point out, I do both platforms. I do radio and I do a podcast. And I will tell you, it is infinitely easier to turn on a microphone and start streaming or recording direct to someone's device or platform and say whatever the hell you want. I promise you, that's easier to get a rile up out of people. It's easier to get people riled up and wanting to, you know, light the torches and grab the pitchforks. But we've learned, I think, over the last several years that with that kind of enthusiasm that you get from someone yelling into a microphone, flexing their biceps with their eyes bulging, with that, sadly, comes a incredible lack of accountability. How many people do you listen to on these podcasts who promised you things with regard to, you know, federal crimes and corruption and Hillary Clinton getting arrested and handcuffed any day now? Tick tock, tick tock. How many of them promised you that they had people very, very well placed in the government who guaranteed you that Jeffrey Epstein was being protected by these powers? And it's all going to come tumbling down, the whole house of cards, and everyone's going to be exposed, and we're going to send people to Gitmo. How many people did you hear on your podcast or on your streaming platform that promised you all of those things? And you got passionate about it, and of course you did, because you're normal. You're a human being, and you're a patriot, and you love this country. And by the way, I'm not saying that any of those things probably are wrong. I'm sure that that corruption is there. I'm sure Hillary Clinton deserves to go to jail. I'm sure that there are very powerful people in government and in the business world that have protected the Jeffrey Epstein secrets. I'm not saying they were wrong. What I'm saying is they promised you things. I'm saying that they extended themselves in such a manner that as soon as things don't go their way and that story seems to be blowing up in people's faces, well, they can just move on. They move on to the next story. They move on to the next outrage. They move on to the next conspiracy or the next scandal. They move on to the next thing that will make their eyes bulge and veins and biceps flex, and their sweaty screaming into a microphone gets you just as worked up over that next thing. And that's why Mark Levin is different. That's why what he does is different. That's why Mark Levin is not an influencer. He is a brilliant broadcaster. I can say all these things about him because I know he's on vacation and he's not listening. Otherwise, he would probably call me and say, O'Connor, what are you doing? But it needs to be said. It needs to be said because there is a difference, there is a distinction between what Mark Levin does and what your friendly neighborhood influencer does. And Mark's been doing it for us 3 hours a night, 5 nights a week, close to 50 weeks a year, except for your occasional vacation. And thank God he takes them so I get a chance. For decades now. And the cream certainly rises, doesn't it? And as people are vying for your attention and for your passions and for your loyalty, as people are out there hoping to wean away Mark's blockbuster, incredible, powerful audience, just keep in mind, you know who Mark is. You know exactly where he comes from. You have gotten to know him all these years, and he leaves it all out on the field. He doesn't have secrets. He's perfectly honest with you about his family, about his wife, about his dogs, about his dad. Remember when his dad would come on? What you see with Mark Levin is what you get. Can the same be said about that influencer trying to get your attention? Listen, you're going to think for yourself, and you're going to do what you want to do. And there's a lot of people out there competing. But just remember, Mark's already got the audience. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to do any stunts to build his audience. He doesn't have to spin tales and wind you down a path and make you promises about how all the conspiratorial corruption is going to be exposed. Just tune in tomorrow for our next episode. Mark doesn't need to do that. He's already earned your trust. He's already earned your respect. All those other people who are trying to maybe knock him down or try to weasel into what he's built from nothing, what have they really done for you? And have they really earned anything? Have they earned your loyalty? Have they earned your respect? Have they even asked for it? Are they interested in building up their own reputations and their own track record and their own credibility? Or are they interested in burning everyone else down? It's not so hard to create. It's not so easy to create. And it's not so easy to build. It's not so easy to do what Mark Levin has done. And sadly, the easiest thing in the world is to burn it all down. Arsonists don't have to work nearly as hard as the architect. So as we wrap up this 2025 and we look back on what an astounding year it has been in politics, in news, in international affairs, and as we reflect on President Trump's track record, I think it's worth noting that a lot of those same influencers that will go nameless, those same people who have not always gotten it right, but every time they get it wrong, they just scream louder. All of those people who claim to be MAGA through and through. I was MAGA from the beginning. I was MAGA before Trump was MAGA. All those people who try to take credit for all of the president's achievements and the president's elections and the president's victories and the president's cabinets and all those people. Well, Mark Levin has something that those people don't have. Mark Levin actually has the President of the United States, Donald Trump, hosting him at the White House for the Hanukkah celebration 10 days ago. President Donald Trump taking to the podium and calling Mark and Julie up to the podium. Spontaneously, unscripted, because he saw him in the audience. The president embraced Mark that night, embraced Julie, allowed Mark to speak spontaneously. This doesn't happen in the White House. As you've got all of those real MAGA types, those influencers, those podcasters, those streamers with really impressive numbers clicking away on the download chart. Just remember, a lot of them are great. Some of them are my friends or acquaintances. They're very talented, and they're very good at what they do. Do it for a quarter century and then check in with me. Do it when President Trump isn't in the White House, and then check in with me. And do it in such a way that not only earns you the kind of adoration and love and gratitude that you saw from Donald Trump at the White House this holiday season, but do it and get that kind of admiration and that respect and that support from President Trump while still maintaining the ability to offer your constructive criticism of the president when you believe it's necessary, because that's Mark Levin. It's one thing to be a sycophant, influencer, selling stuff and doing whatever it takes to make it look like you're a cheerleader for Donald Trump. It's another thing to have the kind of track record, intelligence, wisdom, and integrity that Mark Levin has. Support this president. Fight for this president. And at times suggest that maybe the president might not want to go in a direction that it looks like he might be going, or might not want to listen to one of the people that he might be listening to, and actually use your platform and use your microphone to maintain your values, your principles, and in your own way, influence the electorate, influence the American people, and yes, even influence the president and still having him embrace you at the end of the year. That's Mark Levin. And boy, I'll tell you, all the influencers out there, listen, they have parties and they have fireworks and they have sparklers and they have light shows and they have big screaming audiences. And if Mark wanted that, he'd have it too, I promise. I've seen him at a book signing where the line is outside the door, down the escalator of the mall, and out the door of the mall. If he wanted that, he could have it. Mark Levin's got something more, and it is an honor, as always, to sit in his chair a few times a year. All right, coming up, I want to hear from you, 877-381-3811. What is your highlight of this year with the Trump presidency? What do you think he did right, and what would you like to see him get done next year? 877-381-3811. I'm Larry O'Connor, and this is the great Mark Levin Show.
Mark Levin.
It's Larry O'Connor in for the great one, Mark Levin. Thanks for listening tonight. And thanks for calling in, if you are calling in. A lot of you still want to talk about the Somali fraud, but I kind of want to move on to a couple of other things like the Trump presidency this first term, his incredible success with the border security and the deportations. And then what about the big, beautiful bill? Yeah, I don't think people have even begun to realize the impact of the tax cuts, because most of them haven't even been implemented yet. They start, well, this Thursday on New Year's Day. They're implemented in calendar year 2026, but even still, some of them are already in place. Or the fact that the 2017 cuts did not sunset as the Democrats would have had them do, and they are permanent now. You've gotten a boost out of that. The market has hit its highest levels. When everyone thought that inflation was going to go up, it actually dropped again this last quarter. And your gross domestic product, the actual rate that the economy grows, exceeded expectations by a full percentage point in the last report. I mean, everything is lining up right now for a boom in 2026. And by the way, while all of that's going on, the trade deficit has declined and the federal deficit has declined. Because despite the tax cut, well, it's funny, I was about to do what the left would do. Strangely, despite the tax cuts, revenue has increased to the federal government. No, actually, it's the opposite. Because of the tax cuts, revenue has increased to the federal government. And it's only the first year. And a lot of people are complaining that Trump has spent too much time on international affairs, which, I mean, it doesn't even seem like he's really spent that much time on international affairs, but what he has done has been effective. And, you know, tariffs, which are a domestic issue, but they are part of foreign policy, and the use of those tariffs have been able to make hostile countries, you know, like the European Union, actually bow to our will and do the things that Trump wanted to get done. Did you think, 10 years ago, when the president said that NATO nations need to step up and honor their commitment that they've promised to do for decades and spend 2% of their domestic product on national defense, people said that he was insane, they'd never do it, and by demanding they do it, he was destroying NATO. Now, not only are they doing it, but he got them to agree to increase it to 5%. And everyone who said he was wrong and a lunatic and crazy and it'll never work, they never have to apologize. They never say I'm wrong. They never correct the record. They just move on to the next outrage. They're like those conservative influencers I was talking about. Sorry, MAGA influencers. All right, 877-381-3811, Larry O'Connor.
Mark Levin, America's think tank. And you can call him at 877-381-3811.
My name's Larry O'Connor. I'm sitting in for Mark Levin. I do radio, morning show host on WMAL in Washington, D.C. I've also got a streaming podcast I do live every day at noon through Town Hall Media, whatever platform you like to watch video on. The You thing, yeah, I'm on that. The Rumble thing, yeah, I'm on that. The Facebook, sure, whatever. You'll find us. Or just go to the Town Hall websites, townhall.com. Townhall.com. We'd love to hear from you here. We're looking back on this first year of the Trump presidency, which I think by any objective measure was a success, an incredible success. Frankly, you forget what got accomplished in this first year. Did you know the federal government shrunk this year? The employees, the number of employees in the federal government shrunk. And not from the military, because the military exceeded their recruitment numbers across the board. Every branch of the military exceeded their recruitment numbers. First time in many, many years. And I already mentioned just scratching the surface on the economy. And it's not like he had a lot of success that he inherited, I mean, it was a bit of a basket case, everything about the federal government and our economy and our military. And yet we're on the other side. And by the way, what about the stability? The only person I believe that didn't make it through the entire first term, I'm just pausing to collect my thoughts because I think every single cabinet secretary is still in place. Every major staff member at the White House is still in place. I think our buddy Dan Bongino, the deputy director of the FBI, is the only person who he started in mid-March, and he announced his resignation, 2 weeks ago, right? So it's been a stable administration so far. I mean, I can go on and on, but I want you to go on. 877-381-3811. What has stood out to you so far? We'll start with line 3 in beautiful Colorado Springs, home of the United States Air Force Academy. I'm in Annapolis, the Naval Academy. So, Patrick, I'm sorry. We got a little bit of a thing there. But anyway, thanks for calling. Is it snowing in Colorado?
No, but it's getting pretty cold. It snowed last night, though.
Nice. All right, so what do you think of the first year? How do you grade the first year of Trump's second term?
Well, I think he's doing a good job, but I don't think he's doing enough. Iran needs to have a complete regime change, so I thought it was a mistake for him to tell the Israelis not to take out the mullahs. We should take them all out, take out their military, and then let the Iranian people have free elections, and we'll hang out there for a while to make sure the void doesn't get filled with the wrong people. I've met people from Iran in the medical career I'm in, and all of them love the United States. It's that small handful of people that are keeping the rest of the country down.
Yeah.
Number two.
Well, real fast before you go, just because the president spoke about Iran today, I don't know if you saw it, but let me just share it with you since it's on topic, and I've got it here.
You want to give him a second chance? Well, we'll give him a couple of second chances, but no, Israel's lived up to the plan 100%. Don't forget, we made the plan possible by taking out Iran. And speaking of Iran, I hope they're not trying to build up again, because if they are, we're going to have no choice but very quickly to eradicate that buildup. So I hope Iran is not trying to build up, as I've been reading that they're building up weapons and other things. And if they are, they're not using the sites that we obliterated, but they're using possibly different sites. We know exactly where they're going, what they're doing, and I hope they're not doing it because we don't want to waste the fuel on a B-2. It's a 37-hour trip.
That's actually pretty funny. Again, he's not talking about regime change at all, but I mean, how would you envision regime change without committing the United States military to an endeavor like that?
Well, all we'd have to do is get the Iranian people, as long as we have their backing, we give them the munitions they need. We take out the mullahs, take out their military, and tell the Iranians, okay, now this is your chance to have free elections. You get in who you want, and we'll hang out to make sure that the wrong people don't get back in. It's almost like when we invaded Normandy. We didn't tell Hitler, hey, you know what, we're going to take over, kick you guys out of Germany, but we'll let you stay as long as you're a good guy. The Iranians are never going to stick to their promises. They're always going to go back to making nukes.
Yeah, but I hear you. But when you compare it to Normandy, you're talking about an armed invasion. And, that's a lot more involved than just arming the rebels that are there. And then we've been in the business of arming rebels a lot. And yeah, they end up overthrowing the government. And then sometimes those rebels that we armed end up being worse than the guys. I'm not saying they'd be worse than the mullahs, but I don't know. I mean.
Part of the deal is that we make a deal with the Iranian people saying we're going to hang out here for a while. We might even have a base in Iran. And that's
okay, so you are talking about a military presence there.
Sure. If that's what the Iranian people want. Say, look, we will hang out here to make sure that this doesn't happen again. The other point I wanted to make real quickly is that probably a more dangerous situation is Mexico. The cartels have assisted our enemies, number one enemy, China, to commit basically chemical warfare against the United States by bringing in so much fentanyl that killed 100,000 Americans. And why are they still alive? Why do the cartels still exist? These are two examples of two countries that the only way you're going to make a change is to destroy the bad guys, not to arrest them, not to put them in jail, but to kill them. And if you send a message to Mexico, first of all, we're not going to give you another nickel, and you're going to help us do this. And if you don't, we just might put an Air Force base in Mexico.
Yeah.
Because enough is enough. And
Patrick, I'll tell you, and listen, I think these are thoughtful observations in Colorado Springs, and I do make note that it was an Air Force base that you went down there. I get it, and I thank you for the call. And let me and quickly as we move on to the next call, I just want to say I think something like that will happen with Mexico. I think right now, the Trump administration, and specifically the point person, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is very intent on focusing a lot of his energies as Secretary of State on Latin America, because it's been neglected. It's right in our backyard. I don't know why we spend more time focused on other parts of the world when China has a foothold now in South America and the Marxists. But the tide is turning in Latin America, and I think Rubio wants to do that. He is doing whatever he can to work with whatever is left of a functioning government in Mexico. And say what you will about it, it is actually more coherent and functioning than most Latin American countries. I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing the activity in Venezuela that does not have a functioning government and actually has a kleptocracy run by Maduro and the Marxists that are still remaining from Chavez's regime. The reason that we have our military approach to Venezuela right now is we're sending the signal to Mexico and other countries. You're next. You're next if you don't do this, if you don't do it yourself. And we'll help you. We'll work with you. But you got to get it done. Thanks for the call, Patrick. Smart stuff. How about Rich in Land O'Lakes, Florida? Rich, line 2, you're next up. I'm Larry O'Connor. It's the Mark Levin Show.
Larry, thanks for taking the call.
Yeah.
I think the obvious one is the border. I mean, that was just, it happened so fast. It happened just like so quickly and efficiently. That's number one.
It is
but number
stunning.
Two, it was just awesome. Number two, I think, is the framework for this economy. You know, his work with, you know, the tariffs and the trade deals that he made. And right now, if you look at some of the things that are really not talked about enough, gas prices down, tax refunds going to be up,
yes.
Rents are down, our growth is at 4.3%.
Yes.
And the chances of recession right now are like 5%. The problem is he's talking about it. Some of the cabinet members are talking about it, maybe a couple of governors, but not a lot of other people are talking about it. The Republicans have to come together here and talk about this. These are things the Democrats do not want, and that's why they're all upset about this.
You know what? It's all great points. These are all great points, and you're right. Listen, to paraphrase Will Rogers, I don't belong to an organized political party. I'm a Republican. We're not organized. We don't stay on message. We never have a coherent. I mean, it's remarkable. Speaker Mike Johnson has been able to do what he has been able to do, herding the cats in the House of Representatives with a 3-seat margin. But I suspect, given that this is an election year coming up in 2026, I suspect they're going to get on message, and I suspect that they're going to follow the lead of the White House, and the White House will get involved in these elections once we know what the districts are and we know where this fight is going to be waged. And I suspect that there will be some pretty clear messaging on the successes here, and even more importantly, putting the onus back on the Democrat. You know, for Democrats to win the majority in the House, they need to defeat an incumbent Republican, and that Republican, all they need to do is say, this Democrat who wants to replace me, this Democrat will have us right back where we were with border policies that Biden embraced, that Alejandro Mayorkas embraced, and that the Democrats celebrated. That's just one of 50 things that the Republicans have been able to accomplish with President Trump that the Democrats will reverse. And I think those messages will be pretty clear. I hope. Thanks for the call, sir. Appreciate it. Let's get to Connie, Greenville, North Carolina. Connie, good evening. Thanks for calling in, and Happy New Year. I'm Larry O'Connor.
Hi, Larry. This is Connie. Happy New Year to you and everyone out there.
Thank you.
I think Trump is doing a great job. He's fulfilling his promises to the people who voted for him. One thing, though, Western North Carolina, where the hurricane came through, I have cousins who live out there. I live more in the middle of more the eastern section of North Carolina, but they're still having so many problems with the infrastructure. And I wish that could be completed so that they can thrive again.
Yeah. Do you think that the tariffs and the onshoring of manufacturing that the president has, that's not going to happen overnight, obviously, but there have been a lot of corporations that have been recommitting to onshoring and bringing certain manufacturing back here. Do you see some hope there?
Well, that's one of Trump's promises for sure. I don't think that has much to do with the Western Carolina Helena hurricane. I think that the money was not given right away. There was a lot of neglect. I don't know who caused that or why, but there still needs to be the roads and the dams and the parts of the mountain that fell down on these towns.
Yeah.
I don't know anything political that caused that unless something we don't know about. But
well, I mean, we do know that there were certain members of FEMA under Biden who just would not provide assistance because they thought that it was a Trump-heavy part of the area, right? Yeah.
Right. People suspected that. People suspected that, and now it's been proven.
Yes, it has. It absolutely has. Yeah. Listen, God, and the reason that I raised the onshore establishment of manufacturing here in the States, North Carolina is one of the states that's going to benefit from that. And I believe that was part of, at least hopefully, the part of rejuvenating that part of the state that was devastated by the hurricane. And I know that there has been a lot of reparations there in terms of FEMA and getting the checks to people that they need. But now the infrastructure needs to be rebuilt. Add that to the list. We'll add that to the list. Thank you and Happy New Year. I appreciate the call. You know what? Keep the calls coming in. I want to. Oh, you know what? Real fast. Let's go to Jim in the Palm Coast of Florida. That's line 5. I've got time for one more call here before we take a break. Hey, Jim, what's up?
Yeah, I'm still here. Thank you. Hey, thanks so much.
You bet. You're on. You're on the line. You're on the air.
Hello.
Yes, you're listening on the radio. Stop doing that. Listen to me on the phone. You're on the air.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Larry. How are you this evening?
I'm great, man. I'm sitting in for Mark Levin. I'm living the dream.
You are. Yes, you are. Regarding our president, our dear president.
Yes.
And everything that he's accomplished, okay? I voted for him because my concern was the illegals that have come here. And we've covered all the issues. Everybody's aware, costs and on and on. But I'd like to address with you the things I'd like for him to right the wrongs in the forthcoming year. Okay? I mean,
okay.
If
you know what?
If there were a wish list. Larry,
I'm with you, and I think you're not alone. So, we're going to put you on hold real fast because I'm right up against it. We're going to bring you back, though, after we take a quick one. Got to pay the bills, and we'll continue because and this will actually help lead us into tomorrow's show, where we're going to have kind of our wish list, our predictions, and our hopes and our resolutions. If you could make a resolution for President Trump, it sounds like that's where we're going here. What is your wish list? What would you like to see the president do? And some unfinished business, I think, is where we're headed with this, and frankly, some justice that needs to be served. We'll get to that in a moment. I'm Larry O'Connor. It's the Mark Levin Show.
Mark Levin.
Such an honor to sit in for Mark Levin here at the end of this 2025. Larry O'Connor here, and we've got Jim in. It was Jim, right? Jim in the South Coast of Florida. Go ahead. You have some unfinished business for POTUS. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, again, kudos to Trump regarding the illegals.
Yeah.
Terrific. But here are the things that I'd like for him to right regarding the wrongs that have been done. As Commander-in-Chief, I'd like him to return the $400,000 plane he accepted from Qatar. That Qatar has American blood on it. I think the count was 241, Larry. Marines in Lebanon. I'm going back a few years. Mm-hmm. The second thing is, I'd like him to kill the Chinese TikTok deal that he set up with Larry Ellison. Ellison's already told us what's going to happen with that, how the privacy will continue to erode, and the horrific degree to which people will be tracked. Another thing that comes to mind, terrific. His administration has kept men out of women's sports, and yet he's permitted the privileged, demented, wealthy class of individuals that we know of to treat women as sport. He's kept women out of sports, but these individuals can treat women as sport and get away with it.
What are you talking about?
I'm referring to the men that may be contained or are contained in the Epstein files.
I'm sorry. The men that are what?
How they'll go unpunished for everything they've done.
Which men are going unpunished for what they've done?
The men associated with Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh. Well, do you think that there's evidence to prosecute people that were associated with Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump standing in the way of that happening?
I think Bondi has intervened. Yes.
All right. Well, we won't solve that here tonight. But tomorrow we will talk about other things that you want the president to handle and focus on in the coming year. I'm Larry O'Connor. It's the Mark Levin Show.